Okay, I'm back. In the last series of videos, we talked about a perfectly competitive market structure and how firms operate within that market structure. Now we're going to turn our attention to Chapter 12, which is the opposite in many ways, or the other end of the spectrum in terms of market structures, monopoly. Okay, so again, I mean that in the sense that with a perfectly competitive market structure, if you think about some of the attributes, right, there are many, many firms. With a monopoly, mono, completely different story. So let's talk a little bit about some of the attributes for a monopoly market structure, okay? I'll begin. You can see I kind of already had the attributes populated here, and I'm going to try to remain off camera a little bit as we walk through this. But, okay, so the goal. What is the goal of a firm that operates as a monopoly? I mean, this shouldn't be a surprise, right? The goal of every firm is to what? It's to maximize profit. It's not to make a profit, it's not to make a revenue, it's to maximize profit. That's the goal. And let me skip to the bottom. What is key? What is unique about a monopoly market structure that only exists in this market structure, does not exist in any other market structure? And that is that the firm is the market and the market is the firm. So there's only one firm that comprises the entire market. And we'll come back to this when we talk about some examples here in a moment. But that's literally what defines a monopoly, is when it's made up of one firm, okay? Now let's go back to the top, right? If the goal is to maximize profit, what is the rule? What is it that tells firms how and where to maximize profit? Well, that point is where your marginal cost equals your marginal revenue, okay? So we talked about that in earlier videos. We'll talk about it again here, but that's the point. That's sort of the magic point that tells firms where and how to maximize revenue. All right, in the short run, what kind of profit can a monopoly earn? And you'll recall again from earlier videos, there's four profit conditions, right? There's economic profit, there's zero economic profit, there's economic loss, and there's shutdown. And the short answer is in the short run, any of the four can be earned. So on any given day, a monopoly may be earning an economic profit, it may be a shutdown, it may be earning a loss. Again, even though that's only a firm of one and it has complete, market power, any of the four apply. The next, in terms of long run profit, you'll recall that in a perfectly competitive market structure, the long run profit is zero economic profit. And the very last video from the last chapter, I went through and explained how, as firms join in to the market and the supply curve shifts, it basically competes the price down to zero economic profit. For a monopoly, things are different, right? And it has everything to do with the barriers. So barriers to entry, right? There, in the previous market structure, in a perfectly competitive market structure, there were no barriers to entry. You couldn't keep firms out. Well, in this market structure, yes, there are. In fact, in many cases, high barriers to entry. So there are barriers that prevent firms from joining this market structure. And so long as those barriers can be maintained, that in the long run, monopolies earn or can enjoy economic profit. And that kind of makes sense, right? Because if you can maintain the barriers and there's no competition, and you manage your business in a way in which you maintain and earn a profit, you can maintain that into the long run, okay? Firms, we've already answered this question. How many firms are there in the market? There's one. There's a single firm, all right? And I'll take this opportunity to kind of expand upon this for a minute. Sometimes, you kind of get lulled into a false sense of understanding. Like, for instance, if we talk about country clubs, is a certain country club a monopoly? Well, you think, well, no, I mean, nationwide, there are plenty of country clubs, so no, that couldn't possibly be the answer. But it depends on how you define your market. Okay, so if I were to define my market as a certain county, So let's just say Smith County, all right? And that was the only country club in Smith County. And you wanted to join a country club in Smith County, and you only had one choice, then in fact you could see that and recognize that as a monopoly within the constructs of how you define your market. So again, the definition and understanding of a monopoly firm largely has to do with how you define your market. Okay, all right, back to the board. Marginal revenue. I'm going to give you the punchline to the joke and then I'll show you later. But the punchline is, so again, you'll recall for perfectly competitive market structure, we had a horizontal demand curve, right? So demand equaled marginal benefit, which also equaled marginal revenue, and it was all equal. Well, in this case, your marginal revenue is less than your price. Again, that's sort of the punchline of the joke. I'm not going to explain why right now, but I'll explain that here shortly, okay? Price. Price is set by the firm. Okay, so again, unlike a perfectly competitive market structure that has to accept the price from the market, in a monopoly situation, it's set by the firm. The product we would describe as unique. And what does unique mean? Unique means there is no substitute. And I'll repeat that. Unique means literally there is no substitute. So back to my earlier example, if I want to, if I only want to join a country club that, has golf as its sort of primary offering, and there's only one choice, I have to join that country club. There may be tennis clubs or maybe disc golf clubs or what have you, but if there literally is no substitute, there's no other option for golf, then that's what I have, okay? Efficient. Again, I'm going to give you the punchline and I'll explain why later. The answer is no. No. Monopolies are inherently not efficient. And the answer why is because there's dead weight loss. And again, we'll look at that here in a minute in a video in just a minute and kind of explain why in more detail. Okay. This line item here is price discrimination. Okay, so price discrimination is the ability to charge different groups of consumers different prices. And again, same answer as before. Short answer is yes. You can price discriminate, or monopolies can price discriminate, so long as they meet two criteria, and we'll talk about that later. So these are all of the attributes of a monopoly market structure. Now, let's go ahead. Well, I'll tell you what. I'll stop the video now and then come back and we'll expand upon it. Okay?